Imagine this. It's early April 2026, and the whole world can't stop watching the news about Iran. Missile strikes, smoke over Tehran, threats to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, that narrow little waterway where almost 20% of the world's oil passes through. Gas prices are jumping everywhere, and a lot of people are thinking, great, another conflict in the Middle East. What else is new? But here's the thing, behind all those scary headlines is a completely different country. A country with over 2,500 years of history that was once one of the most powerful empires on Earth. A place where people write incredible poetry, weave the world's most beautiful carpets, cook with saffron, and are super proud to be Persians, not Arabs. Today we're not just gonna recap the latest headlines. We're gonna break it down like real talk, who the Iranian people actually are, why their ancient Persia still matters, and what's really behind this conflict with the US and Israel. In the next 20 to 25 minutes, you'll understand Iran way better than from TV or quick TikTok clips. Ready to dive in? Let's go! Alright, so first things first, let's answer the big question. Who are Iranians actually? Most people hear Iran and immediately think Arabs or Middle East equals same thing. But here's the truth that blows a lot of minds. Iranians are not Arabs. Not even close. Iranians are Persians. They're an Indo-European people with a completely different origin, language, and history than their Arab neighbors. Think of it like this. Persians are more closely related to Europeans in terms of ancient roots than to Arabs. Their language, Farsi, also called Persian, is totally different from Arabic. It's actually closer to English and other Indo-European languages in its deep structure. Iran is a huge country, roughly the size of Alaska and significantly bigger than France, Germany, and Spain combined. It's got dramatic mountains, huge deserts, and sits right next to the Persian Gulf. The population is around 90 million people, and it's one of the youngest countries in the world. The average age is only about 32. That means tons of young people, energy, and a very vibrant society under the surface. Now, when you walk around Tehran or Isfahan, you'll see a super diverse mix. Persians are the majority, but there are also millions of Azerbaijanis, Kurds, Lors, Baluchis, and others. And surprisingly, they all live together relatively peacefully compared to what you might expect from the news. But the real heart of Iranian identity is their ancient Persian heritage. They're incredibly proud of it. While a lot of the region turned to Arabic culture after the Islamic conquests, Persians kept their own language, poetry, and cultural soul alive. They have this incredibly rich tradition of poetry. Names like Hafez and Rumi are absolute legends. Even today, many Iranians can quote verses from memory. Their poetry is deep, romantic, philosophical. It's not just pretty words, it's part of who they are. And historically? Persians were absolute pioneers in science, math, and administration. Long before Europe had universities, Persian scholars were advancing algebra, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. The word algorithm actually comes from the name of a famous Persian mathematician. So when Iranians say they come from one of the oldest continuous civilizations on Earth, they're not exaggerating. They see themselves as heirs to the great Persian Empire, the same one that once stretched from India all the way to Greece. Bottom line, Iran isn't just another Middle Eastern country. It's a unique civilization with its own proud identity, language, and thousands of years of history. And once you understand that, a lot of what's happening today starts to make more sense. Cool, right? Now let's travel back in time and see how all of this began. Around 550 BC, a guy named Cyrus the Great did something that changed history forever. He founded the Achaemenid Persian Empire, the first real-world empire that stretched from India all the way to the Mediterranean Sea and even into parts of Europe. At its peak, it was the largest empire the world had ever seen up to that point. What made the Persians so special wasn't just that they conquered a ton of land. It's how they ruled it. Unlike many empires before them that were super brutal, the Persians were actually pretty smart and tolerant for their time. Cyrus the Great is famous for something groundbreaking. He's often called one of the first rulers to promote human rights. When he conquered Babylon, instead of destroying everything and enslaving people, he let the Jews return home and allowed different peoples to keep their own customs and religions. There's even an ancient artifact called the Cyrus Cylinder that many consider an early declaration of rights. The Persians built incredible infrastructure. They created the famous Royal Road, a massive highway system that stretched over 1,500 miles. It was so well organized that royal messengers could travel across the empire at crazy speeds using horse relays. This was basically the ancient version of the postal service, and it worked amazingly well. Their administration was also way ahead of its time. They divided the huge empire into smaller provinces called satrapies, each ruled by a governor, but with strong central control from the king. They had a fair tax system, a professional army, and even an early form of intelligence service. Culturally, they were incredibly advanced too. They built magnificent cities like Persepolis, with huge palaces, beautiful columns, and detailed carvings that still amaze people today. Persian art, architecture, and gardens influenced many civilizations that came after them. So when we talk about ancient Persia, we're not talking about some backward desert kingdom. This was one of the most developed, organized, and sophisticated civilizations of its era, a true superpower that brought stability, trade, and cultural exchange across 3 continents. Iranians today still carry this pride deep inside. When they look at their history, they don't see themselves as a new country. They see themselves as heirs to one of the greatest empires in human history. And that ancient legacy is a big part of why modern Iran behaves the way it does on the world stage. They have this strong sense of identity and independence that goes back thousands of years. Mind-blowing, right? Now, after all that greatness, what happened next? Let's fast forward through the centuries and see how Persia eventually became the modern Islamic Republic of Iran. Let's talk about the big turning point in the 20th century. Fast forward to the 1900s. Iran, which was still called Persia back then, discovered something that would change its fate forever: massive oil reserves. Suddenly, the country became extremely important to the world, especially to Western powers like Britain and later the United States. In the middle of the 20th century, Iran started modernizing rapidly under the rule of the Pahlavi dynasty, first Reza Shah and then his son, Mohammad Reza Shah. They wanted to turn Iran into a modern, secular, Western-style country. The Shah pushed hard for modernization. Women got the right to vote and could dress freely, universities were built, industries developed, and Tehran started looking more like a European capital than a traditional Middle Eastern city. For many Iranians at the time, especially the educated middle class, this felt like progress. Iran was finally catching up with the modern world. However, not everyone was happy. A lot of people felt that the Shah was moving too fast and too close to the West. There was growing anger about corruption in the government, huge inequality between rich and poor, and the feeling that Iranian culture and traditions were being erased in favor of Western values. The secret police, Savak, was also very harsh toward anyone who opposed the regime. By the late 1970s, dissatisfaction had reached a boiling point. Different groups, religious leaders, students, leftists, and ordinary people, all united against the Shah. This led to the Islamic Revolution of 1979, one of the most important events of the 20th century in the Middle East. In just a few months, massive protests forced the Shah to flee the country. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile and became the new leader. Iran was transformed from a secular monarchy into the Islamic Republic of Iran. The new system put religious clerics in charge, with the supreme leader at the very top. This revolution completely changed Iran's relationship with the West. Just months after the revolution, Iranian students seized the American embassy in Tehran and held 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. That event basically destroyed any chance of normal relations between Iran and the United States for decades. So, in a very short time, Iran went from being a close ally of the West to one of its biggest adversaries in the region. This 1979 revolution is the key moment that explains almost everything we see happening today. Alright, now comes the part everyone's probably waiting for. Why is Iran in conflict with the United States and Israel? Let's break it down clearly and fairly, without saying who's right or wrong. There are several deep reasons that have built up over decades. First, politics and ideology. After the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran's new leaders completely rejected the Western model. They created a system based on Islamic principles, with the supreme leader holding the highest power. Iran sees itself as a revolutionary country that stands against what it calls Western imperialism and arrogance. The United States, on the other hand, views Iran's government as a threat to stability in the Middle East. So from the very beginning, their worldviews have clashed hard. Second, regional influence. Iran has built what it calls the axis of resistance. This includes support for groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and other Shia militias in Iraq and Syria. From Iran's perspective, this is about self-defense and protecting Shia communities. From the US and Israel's point of view, these groups are dangerous proxies that threaten Israel's security and American interests in the region. This creates a constant cycle of tension. Third, the nuclear program. This is probably the most controversial issue. Iran says its nuclear program is completely peaceful, only for energy and medical purposes. They argue they have the same right as any other country to develop nuclear technology. The United States and Israel strongly disagree. They believe Iran is secretly trying to develop nuclear weapons, which would completely change the balance of power in the Middle East. This fear led to the 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA, which Trump pulled the US out of in 2018. Since then, negotiations have been on and off, and tensions keep rising. Fourth, sanctions. Because of these disagreements, the US and many other countries have placed heavy economic sanctions on Iran. These sanctions make it very difficult for Iran to sell oil, trade normally, or access international banking. Iran says the sanctions are unfair and are hurting ordinary Iranian people. The West says the sanctions are necessary to pressure Iran to change its behavior. All these factors feed into each other. Every time there's an incident, whether it's a missile strike, a drone attack, or a new sanction, the distrust grows deeper. Important to understand, both sides have their own legitimate fears and interests. Iran feels surrounded and threatened by American military bases all around it. At the same time, the US and Israel see Iran's actions and rhetoric as an existential threat to their security. It's a complicated, decades-old standoff with no simple solution. So after all the history, let's talk about what daily life in Iran actually looks like today. Iranians are famously hospitable and warm people. Family means everything, and you'll often see big gatherings, shared meals, and long conversations over tea. But life has clear limits. Women must wear hijab in public, the internet is heavily censored, and the government controls many aspects of daily life. Still, young Iranians are very tech-savvy. They use VPNs to access Instagram, YouTube, and the outside world. Education is one of Iran's biggest strengths. Literacy is high, universities are solid, and the country produces a lot of doctors, engineers, and scientists despite the sanctions. You see a strong contrast everywhere. Modern shopping malls and cafes in Tehran stand next to traditional bazaars and ancient mosques. Young people in jeans and sneakers walk beside those in full traditional attire. It's a society caught between deep-rooted traditions and a strong desire for modernity. Sanctions have made things harder. Prices are high, some goods are hard to find, and many families struggle financially. Yet Iranians are incredibly resilient. They still enjoy picnics, football, music, and keep their famous sense of humor even in tough times. So, with everything we've covered, many people naturally ask, how dangerous is the situation right now, and could it turn into a big war? Iran plays a very important role in the world, mainly because of its geography and resources. It sits right next to the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow passage through which about 20% of the world's oil flows every day. Any major disruption there can affect gas prices and economies everywhere. On one side, Iran has built strong alliances with countries like Russia and China, and it supports various groups across the Middle East. On the other side, it faces powerful opponents, primarily the United States and Israel, who see Iran's growing influence and military capabilities as a serious threat to regional stability. That's exactly why the whole world is watching Iran so closely right now. Its actions can quickly impact energy markets, international diplomacy, and security across the Middle East. At the same time, both sides know that a full-scale war would be extremely costly for everyone involved, in lives, money, and global consequences. So while tensions are high and incidents keep happening, there is still a lot of back-channel diplomacy and careful calculations going on behind the scenes. It's a complex and delicate situation, not a simple story of good versus evil. Now, to wrap things up. We started this video with dramatic headlines, missile strikes, smoke over Tehran, and threats about the Strait of Hormuz. But now, after 25 minutes together, I hope you see a much fuller picture. Iran is not just a country in the news. It's an ancient civilization with over 2,500 years of proud history, incredibly rich culture, warm people, and a very complex reality. It's neither purely good nor purely evil. It's a nation with deep pride in its Persian roots, trying to navigate between tradition and modernity while facing enormous pressure from the outside world. The truth is, you can't fully understand today's conflict with the US and Israel without knowing this long and complicated history. Because what's happening now isn't just about rockets and sanctions, it's also about identity, pride, fear, and power that go back thousands of years. So, the big question I want to leave you with is this. Can we really understand this conflict if we don't understand the history behind it? Let me know in the comments what you think. If you enjoyed this one, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.